I've always been a restless sleeper. Even as a child, I would twist and turn, drifting between shallow dreams and sudden awakenings for reasons I never understood. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the night the dreams grew a mouth, and the mouth learned to speak my name. It started as a faint whisper. At first, I thought it was merely the residue of a long day. Stress, fatigue, the usual. The voice that slithered into the fringes of my sleep was soft, distant, no more threatening than the groan of an old house settling in the dark. But the tone carried a strange weight, a cold familiarity, like someone who knew me better than I knew myself. "Are you awake yet?" The words drifted through the dream like a ripple on still water. I didn't see where they came from. There was no mouth, no face, no form at all. Just darkness. A dark so absolute it didn't look like the absence of light, but something deeper, like the absence of existence itself. Yet I felt watched, observed, examined. My dreamscape was empty. No colors, no shapes, just an infinite black horizon that stretched in all directions. A void. And standing in the center of it was me, or something that resembled me. My silhouette flickered in and out of sight, glitching like a corrupted video file. In that first night, I didn't panic. I convinced myself it was a normal nightmare, just unusual in its clarity. But the voice persisted. "You hear me, don't you?" My breathing grew shallow. I felt pressure on my chest, a heavy, invisible weight pushing down on me. I tried to move, but my limbs responded sluggishly, as if submerged in thick tar. I tried to speak, but no sound escaped, only a desperate wheeze. The whisper sharpened. "Good, you're listening." I wanted to wake up. I tried to force myself out of the dream, to jolt upright like I always did during nightmares. But the void held on to me. It sucked me deeper, sealing me inside it like a coffin with no walls. My heartbeat thundered inside my skull as the voice leaned closer, though I still couldn't see a body attached to it. Then I felt it. A breath, hot, wet, right against my ear. "I've been waiting a very long time." I snapped awake, drenched in sweat, my pulse hammering so loudly I could hear it echo through my bedroom. My room looked normal, faint moonlight slipping through the curtains, my furniture where it always was, the hum of the ceiling fan. But the sensation of that breath lingered on my skin. And the whisper still rang inside my skull, as if the dream hadn't ended at all. I sat up in bed and ran trembling fingers through my hair, telling myself it was nothing more than a nightmare, a vivid, unsettling nightmare. They happen. People experience sleep paralysis, lucid dreams, auditory hallucinations. I wasn't special. But the weight of the entity's last sentence stuck with me. "I've been waiting a very long time." Waiting for what? Waiting for me? I tried to brush it off, but as the night dragged on, I noticed things, small details that didn't feel small at all. The corner of my room felt darker than usual. Not dimmer, darker. As if the shadows had depth, as if they were swallowing the weak moonlight instead of merely obscuring it. And the longer I stared at them, the more I felt as if something inside those shadows was staring back. I forced myself to sleep again, though my nerves screamed for me to stay awake. I told myself dreams couldn't hurt me, that whatever I saw was nothing more than my imagination twisting under the weight of stress. But when sleep finally came, I was dragged instantly, violently back into the void. There was no soft transition, no drifting. I fell into it like a stone sinking straight to the bottom of a dark ocean. The black horizon spread beneath me, swallowing time, sound, thought. And standing there, illuminated by some source of light that didn't exist, was a figure. Not me, not a silhouette this time. Something else entirely. It didn't have a face, or rather its face was a swirling blur, constantly shifting like static on an old television screen. But its eyes, if you could call them eyes, glowed faintly, like dying embers buried in ash. "You came back." The voice wasn't a whisper now. It was low, resonant, vibrating through the void and through my bones. My legs buckled, and the ground beneath me rippled like black liquid. I staggered back, but the entity glided forward, its featureless head tilting with an unnatural smoothness. "Don't be afraid," it said, its tone warm, almost reassuring. "You've been here before. You just don't remember." I shook my head. I tried to speak, to deny, but my voice refused to come out. Panic burned in my throat as the entity drifted closer, its static shifting across the blur of its face, and spoke in a tone that made my skin crawl. "Do you know how long I've been trying to reach you?" Its voice echoed inside my skull, far louder than it had any right to be. My knees collapsed beneath me, and I fell into the black ground. Except it wasn't ground anymore. It was liquid, thick and icy, swallowing my legs, my arms, my torso. I tried to claw my way back up, but the void clung to me like tar. The entity watched, its head tilting again, in a disturbingly gentle motion. "You think this is a dream, but dreams are only doors, and some doors open from the other side." My heart seized in my chest. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. The void rose past my neck, threatening to engulf my head. As the black liquid crawled toward my mouth, the entity knelt beside me. It reached out a hand, if that thing could be called a hand, and placed it on my cheek. Its touch was cold enough to burn. "Don't fight it." A pause. "I want to show you something." The liquid surged over my face, flooding my mouth, my nose, my eyes. I tried to thrash, but my movements weakened as the darkness consumed me. A roaring sound erupted in my ears, like a distant storm tearing open the sky. And then, suddenly, everything stopped. No sound, no movement, no void. I was sitting upright in my bed again, gasping, shaking, my throat raw as if I had screamed for hours. But this time, I didn't wake up alone, because right beside me, standing inches from my bedside, was a shadow. Not the ordinary kind cast by the moonlight. This one was darker, sharper, denser, the shape of a person but frozen, unmoving, as though waiting for me to realize it was real. My breath hitched. I blinked, and the shadow blinked back. Only for a brief moment, a flicker, but it happened. I scrambled backward, slamming my spine against the headboard. My lungs strained for air as terror snapped every nerve awake. The shadow didn't move. It simply lingered, a solid silhouette carved from the absence of light. Then I heard it again. The voice, but it wasn't in my dream now. It was in the room. "You can stay awake if you want." A soft chuckle rattled through the air. "But we both know you'll have to sleep eventually." And as the voice faded, the shadow slowly dissolved into the corner of the room, into that same unnatural darkness I had noticed earlier. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night, and when the morning finally broke, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The entity wasn't just living in my dreams anymore. It had followed me out. Morning should have brought relief. Light should have erased fear. But when I opened my eyes after that sleepless, trembling night, daylight only made everything worse. Because daylight didn't wash away the shadow. It only made it easier to see how wrong it was. I sat up slowly, every muscle stiff from tension, and scanned the room. The corners were illuminated, the curtains parted just enough for sunlight to spill through, yet the far left corner, the same one where the shadow retreated, remained dimmer than the rest. Not dark exactly, but as if something in that corner was absorbing the light instead of reflecting it. That's when I noticed something lying on the floor. A shape, a slight indentation, as though someone had been standing there all night, pressing their weight into the wooden boards. My stomach tightened. I swung my legs over the bed, hesitating before stepping down, as though the floor itself might buckle beneath me. Every logical piece of my brain tried to explain it away: settling wood, shadows cast by furniture, a trick of my imagination amplified by exhaustion. But then I saw the scratches. A set of thin, straight, perfectly parallel lines carved into the floorboards. 5 of them, as if something with long, precise fingers had dragged its hand along the wood while standing there. I crouched slowly, reaching out with trembling fingers. The grooves were real, deep, fresh, and they led from the corner directly toward my bed. My throat closed up. I jerked back, heart hammering so hard it made my vision blur. I didn't remember hearing anything. No footsteps, no dragging, no scratching. I didn't remember sleeping at all. But something had moved. Something had stood beside me, watching, waiting, and I knew exactly what it was. The entity, whatever it was no longer bound to the void of my nightmares. It was here, with me, awake. I stumbled into the bathroom, splashing cold water across my face, gripping the sides of the sink until my knuckles turned bone white. My reflection looked sickly pale, my eyes red-shot, dark crescents carved beneath them like bruises. "You're losing it," I whispered to myself. "Get a hold of yourself." But even the bathroom mirror felt wrong. There was a delay, barely noticeable, between my movements and my reflection. A fraction of a second, a tiny lag, like my reflection was thinking before copying me. I blinked hard, leaned closer, and placed my hand on the surface of the glass. My reflection's hand touched the glass a breath too late. I staggered back. No, I must have been hallucinating. Sleep deprivation does terrible things. That had to be it. Except sleep deprivation doesn't carve perfect claw marks on hardwood floors. It doesn't blink back at you from the dark, and it sure as hell doesn't follow you out of your dreams. I stepped away from the mirror, avoiding my reflection as though it might reach out and grab me. I dressed quickly, trying not to think about the whispered voice that stuck to my thoughts like glue. "You'll have to sleep eventually." I needed air. I needed noise, movement, people, anything to pull me away from the claustrophobic fear gripping my apartment. The hallway outside my unit felt normal enough. Bright, empty, the hum of the elevator down the hall, the distant echo of someone closing their door. Ordinary. I almost convinced myself I could breathe again. But as I reached the stairwell door, a cold ripple crawled up the length of my spine. I froze. Something had changed. The air felt heavier, thicker. Not colder exactly, but denser, as though I had stepped into a room filled with invisible smoke. The overhead light flickered once, twice, then steadied. I turned slowly. At the far end of the hallway stood a shadow. Not a person, a shadow, flat against the wall despite the fact that nothing was casting it. My breath caught. The hallway was too bright, too open. Shadows don't exist without something to form them. But this one didn't need permission. It lived on the wall like a stain. Its head tilted. My chest tightened violently. I stumbled backwards, reaching blindly for the stairwell door. The shadow drifted, not walked, but slid along the wall toward me. Its limbs stretched unnaturally like ink running down parchment. I shoved the stairwell door open, nearly tumbling inside. As soon as the door shut, the heavy feeling vanished. I leaned back against it, shaking, listening. Silence. Just the faint hum of building ventilation and the echo of my ragged breathing. No whisper, no sliding shadow, no impossible presence clinging to the walls. For a moment, I dared to believe I had outrun it. Then I heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping from the other side of the door. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, deliberate, like fingers. 5 fingers, scraping gently against the wood in a calm, patient rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. I covered my mouth with both hands, trying to smother the terrified sound building in my throat. The tapping continued for another 10 seconds, 15, 20. Then it stopped. A long silence stretched out, thick and suffocating, followed by a whisper. I see you. I bolted down the stairs, stumbling, almost falling, gripping the railing so hard I felt metal bite into my palm. I didn't stop until I burst out into the street, gasping for air like I'd just escaped drowning. People passed by without so much as a glance. Cars honked, a dog barked somewhere. The world was bright and loud and alive, reassuringly normal, but my heart wouldn't slow. The entity didn't care if I was awake. It didn't care about walls or distance. It had found me, and it was playing with me. I ended up at a cafe near my building, a corner place with tall windows and the comforting clatter of cups and conversation. I sat in a booth by the window, gripping a hot cup of coffee like it was a lifeline. I kept my eyes on the reflections in the glass, but I didn't look at my reflection. I looked at everything behind me, every passerby, every shadow, every flicker of movement that could be him. At some point, a server placed food on my table. I didn't remember ordering. I didn't touch it. The coffee cooled in my hands. Minutes bled into an hour, maybe 2. Nothing happened. No whispers, no shifting shadows, no tapping fingers. Eventually, stupidly, I started to believe I was safe there. So when the sunlight dimmed for just a second, swallowed by a passing cloud, I didn't pay attention. Not at first. But then the dimness didn't go away. I looked up. The cloud hadn't moved. In fact, there was no cloud at all. The light outside had simply drained, as if something enormous had passed between me and the sun. The cafe noise warped, voices stretching, slowing, distorting, until every sound felt wrong, as if someone had taken reality and twisted it a few degrees off center. I looked at the window and saw my reflection again, except it wasn't doing what I was doing. I sat frozen. My reflection slowly lifted a hand. I did not. Its head turned unnaturally far to the side, staring at something behind me, a direction I refused to look towards. Its mouth opened. Wider. Wider. Too wide. Then it whispered through the glass, fog blooming across the surface. "Don't turn around." My blood ran cold. My hands started to shake, but I turned, because something was standing directly behind me, close enough that I felt cold breath against the back of my neck. A familiar voice murmured, soft and delighted, "I told you, I'm awake now too." And the lights in the cafe went out, all at once, plunging everything into darkness, except for one shape, one shadow. The entity. Its eyes glowed like dim embers in a dead fire as it stepped toward me. The darkness inside the cafe didn't feel natural. It didn't feel like the sudden result of a power outage or a blown fuse. It felt thick, almost textured, like a fabric draped over reality. I stood frozen in place, listening to the silence, the kind that presses against your eardrums until even your heartbeat sounds too loud. The glow of the entity's eyes remained steady in the dark, two dim coals flickering with a hungry focus. Then, in a slow, deliberate motion, the entity blinked. When its eyelids moved, the darkness moved with them. It was as if the shadows obeyed its heartbeat. I backed away, my palms sliding across the smooth surface of the cafe table until my hip hit the edge of the booth. My breathing was too fast, too jagged, my mind skittering between fight and flight, searching for an escape that didn't exist. The entity's gaze followed me with an eerie stillness, as though it were savoring each second of my terror. Then, slowly, it spoke. "You don't understand," it whispered. The voice was soft, but its softness made every word feel like a cold fingertip dragging down my spine. "This isn't a haunting. This isn't a nightmare. You crossed a boundary." "I never crossed anything," I rasped. "I never asked for this." "You strayed too far into your dreams," the entity said, taking another silent step toward me. "When you wander deep enough, something always finds you. Something always welcomes you." My throat tightened. "Why me?" Its eyes glowed brighter for a moment. "Because you were alone. Because you were hollow. Because your mind was open, waiting to be filled." I swallowed at the implication. Had loneliness opened the door? Had long nights in silent rooms made me vulnerable? The cafe's outlines began to fade, the chairs and tables dissolving like wet paint. The air thickened further, shifting from the cool atmosphere of the real world to something warmer, heavier, and humid. I realized then what was happening. The entity wasn't standing in the cafe with me. It was pulling me into its realm. The world tilted, not physically, but perceptually. The ground felt both solid and fluid beneath my feet, like standing on a floor that was pretending not to be water. The glow of its eyes brightened, expanding into two swirling amber lights until they took up my entire field of vision. The walls melted away, stretching into an endless void that rippled like liquid shadow. And then it stopped. The world snapped into clarity. I was standing in a place I recognized immediately. The dream corridor, the one I had been trapped in for years without understanding. A long hallway of no doors, no ceiling lights, and no windows. Only a long passageway of dark stone stretching forward into nothingness. The air smelled of cold dust and damp stone, as though the place had never once been touched by sunlight. "You return here every night," the entity murmured behind me. "This place belongs to you, or it did. Now it belongs to me." I turned around, forcing myself to face it. "If this place belongs to you, then why pull me in again? Why show me all this?" It drifted forward, its figure wavering like smoke. "Because you broke a rule." My voice trembled. "What rule?" The entity tilted its head, and the entire corridor creaked in response, as though the structure itself bowed to its motion. "There are 3 rules in the dream realm. You broke the first. The second is unfolding now, and the third—" It paused as if savoring the suspense. "The third is the one that will end you." I took a step back, my heels scraping against the cold stone floor. "Tell me the rules." "You already know them," it replied, "but you pretend not to." I shook my head. "I don't know anything about this place." "Then listen closely," the entity whispered. Its voice echoed down the corridor like 1,000 overlapping murmurs. "Rule 1, never look for me." I clenched my teeth. "I never looked for you." "You did." Its eyes flickered. "When you tried to wake yourself from the dream last night, you pushed deeper instead, and when you saw the void at the end of the hall, You stared too long. You called me. My lips parted, but no words came out. I had stared into the void. I had tried to force my mind awake. And in that moment, something had stared back. Rule 2, the entity continued, drifting closer, is simpler. If I follow you out of the dream, you must not acknowledge me. My blood ran cold. The tapping in the hallway, the whisper behind me, the shadow in the corner of my room, the reflection in the cafe window, the voice saying, "I see you." I had acknowledged it a dozen times. You've broken the second rule beyond repair, the entity said calmly. I am part of your waking world now. I felt sick. What's the third rule? A slow smile formed, subtle, faint, but unmistakable across its shifting face. Rule 3, it whispered, is the one no dreamer survives. Never ask the rules. My breath caught. You asked, it said simply, and now the dream will collapse around you. You won't know which world you're in. You won't know when you're awake or asleep. And eventually, you won't know who you are. The corridor trembled violently. Cracks crawled up the stone walls like spreading veins. A deep guttural rumble reverberated through the entire dream space. Darkness pooled at my feet, traveling upward in slow, creeping tendrils. I spun around and ran. I didn't know where I was going. The corridor had no end, no doors, no escape. My footsteps echoed in uneven patterns, as if the walls were trying to record the sound and play it back too slowly. Each breath came out sharp and cold, burning my lungs. Behind me, the entity didn't run. It walked. Its footsteps were soft, calm, measured, a predator not needing to hurry. Stop running. The collapse will come regardless. I pushed harder, ignoring the numbness that spread out my legs. The walls began to melt like candle wax, dripping downward in long, dark streaks. The floor softened beneath my shoes. The corridor flickered, changing shape, stretching, bending, spiraling. Then, all at once, I slammed into something solid. A door that never existed in this dream before. Wooden, crooked, splintering at the edges. I grabbed the handle without thinking and yanked it open. Bright light blinded me, and then I fell, straight down, as if the world dropped out beneath me. The last thing I heard before consciousness snapped was the entity's whisper drifting through the collapsing darkness. You've made the dream hungry. I woke with a violent gasp, like someone breaking the surface of freezing water, and for a moment, I didn't know where I was. My heart hammered so hard that my ribs ached, and sweat clung to my skin in icy sheets. The room around me looked familiar. My bedroom, my blankets, the dim glow of early dawn leaking through the blinds, but everything felt slightly off. The angles of the walls looked too sharp, the shadows looked too still, and the air carried a faint metallic taste that didn't belong in the waking world. I sat up slowly, rubbing my face, trying to steady my breathing, but as soon as I moved, I saw it. Something was sitting in the corner of my room. Not standing, not lurking, not hiding, sitting, as if it had been waiting patiently for me to open my eyes. My stomach twisted. It wasn't a solid figure, not quite. It was more like a silhouette made of layered darkness, as though someone had cut a human shape out of pitch black paper and left it perched casually atop a wooden chair. Its head turned slightly, and although no features were visible, I felt its attention settle on me like weight pressing against my chest. I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe. I remembered rule 2. Do not acknowledge it if it follows you out of the dream. But acknowledgement felt unavoidable. Every cell in my body screamed that something intelligent and watchful sat only 10 feet away, and it had crossed into my world with purpose. I stared straight ahead, keeping my gaze locked on the opposite wall, fighting the instinct to look at the thing watching me. My voice was thin. "It's my imagination." The shadow leaned forward. Even without sound, the movement was unmistakable. A trembling breath scraped through my throat. "This is just dream residue, sleep hallucination, hypnopompic imagery." But I knew better. My room wasn't cold before. It wasn't wrong before. And the shadows never used to breathe. I slid one foot out from under the covers, then the other. The silhouette didn't move. It simply observed, but the air around it seems to ripple faintly, as though the boundaries of its shape were dissolving into the dimness of dawn. Carefully, quietly, I stood and walked toward the bedroom door, pretending I didn't feel the entity's gaze dissecting every motion. The old wooden boards creaked beneath my feet. I flinched, then cursed myself for reacting. Fear was acknowledgement. Acknowledgement was invitation. Half blind with dread, I made it out of the room. The hallway felt safer only by comparison. I leaned against the wall, sliding down until I sat on the carpet. My hands shook uncontrollably. My mind felt frayed, like someone had tugged at the edges of my sanity until threads began to come loose. Then, the sound started. A soft, rhythmic tapping. Not from the bedroom, not from the hallway walls, not from the ceiling, but inside my head. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps again. The same rhythm the entity used in the dream corridor. I pressed my palms against my temples, squeezing my eyes shut. "Stop." The tapping grew louder. "Stop, please just stop." And suddenly, silence. I didn't open my eyes for a long time. When I finally did, the hallway was empty, still, and quiet. I forced myself to breathe more deeply, pressing my back against the wall, grounding myself. I needed something real, something normal. So I stood shakily and walked into the kitchen. The moment I stepped inside, dread rippled through me. Something was wrong with the light. Morning light should have been soft, pale, creeping in gently through the window. But instead, the kitchen was washed in a strange, unnatural tint. Colors muted, edges softened, shadows smeared as if they were painted in with a trembling hand. It looked like a dream's imitation of morning. My knees went weak. I lifted my hand and touched the refrigerator handle. Cold, solid, real. I touched the countertop. Smooth, real. My own pulse hammered against my fingertips. Alive. But when I looked toward the window, my breath froze. There was fog outside. Not morning mist, not desert cold, thick, rolling fog, impossible, suffocating, and moving against the wind. It pressed against the glass as though something inside it wanted to seep into the house. I stepped back. The kitchen floor felt wrong beneath my feet, not soft or warped, just wrong, as though the tiles were imitations of themselves. And then I noticed something else. My shadow. It wasn't aligning properly with the light. Instead of stretching smoothly along the floor, it bent slightly at the middle, as if influenced by another unseen source of light, one that didn't exist in the room, one that didn't belong to this world. My breath trembled. Please, not again, not while I'm awake. The lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then a soft, deliberate inhale echoed behind me. I turned. Not fast, not dramatically, just enough to see the doorway. The entity was standing there. No longer sitting, no longer a silhouette. It had shape now. Not defined, not human, but closer. Its body was elongated, its limbs slightly too thin, its outline shimmering like heat rising from asphalt. It wasn't solid, but it wasn't smoke anymore either. It was something evolving, something testing the limits of physical space. Worse, the entity was breathing, slowly, audibly, rhythmically. I stumbled back until my hip hit the counter, knocking over a mug that shattered on the floor. The sound echoed through the kitchen, too loud, too sharp, as if noise behaved differently around the entity. Its head tilted, curious. I forced my voice through trembling lips. "You're not supposed to be here." It didn't answer. It stepped once into the kitchen. The fog outside thickened, smearing the edges of the window until no outside world remained visible. The dream realm, the waking realm, the corridor, they were blurring into one shapeless reality. My vision flickered for a moment, a thin veil of static crawling across my eyes. The entity's voice came next, not aloud, but inside my thoughts, like a whisper sliding behind my consciousness. "You asked the rules. You made the door. Now the dream is everywhere." I clamped my hands to my ears, though it made no difference. "Get out of my head." "I'm not in your head," it whispered. "I'm in your hours." The kitchen dimmed further, shadows lengthening unnaturally. The entity drifted closer, and my back pressed hard against the counter, as if trying to melt into it. Its presence filled the room, saturating the air with unbearable heaviness. Then it spoke again. "There is one more rule, and you will break it next." My legs buckled. I slid down to the floor, my palms scraping against cold tile. Tears stung my eyes, not from sadness, but from sheer sensory overwhelm. The entity loomed above me, its shifting outline flickering like broken animation. Then it stopped, still, silent, waiting. For what? That's when I realized it wanted me to speak. It wanted me to ask, to react, to acknowledge, to break the final rule. I pressed both hands to my mouth, choking back every instinct to scream, to beg, to demand answers. I stayed frozen, curled against the counter, refusing to talk, refusing to move. Minutes passed, or hours. Time lost meaning. Finally, the entity drifted backward, its form dissolving into haze, then shadow, then nothing. The fog outside thinned. The kitchen regained its normal color, the tiles solidifying beneath me. My shadow straightened slowly, aligning properly with the morning light. It was gone. For now. But its last whisper lingered behind my eyes like afterimage. "You will sleep again, and when you do, I will show you the rule you cannot keep." For the rest of the day, I avoided every shadow in the house, every corner, every reflective surface, every room where the quiet felt just a little too heavy. My body moved through the motions of living, but my mind was locked in a silent countdown toward the moment sleep would claim me again. Each blink felt longer, each breath slower, and every hour that passed tightened a vice around my chest. By sunset, fear grew into a physical ache. I brewed coffee I didn't drink. I paced until my legs shook. I opened the windows just to feel real air again. But the dread never left. It didn't even weaken. When night settled outside, I turned every light on, filling the house with a brightness that felt artificial and desperate. I sat on the couch, hugging a blanket close, trying to keep my eyes from closing, but exhaustion weighed down my limbs with a heaviness too deep to ignore. My eyelids fluttered. I forced them open. They fluttered again. A moment later, a soft static hum filled the room. I looked at the TV. It was turning on by itself. The screen flickered, showing nothing but gray-white static, just like in my dream. My pulse spiked painfully as the air thickened again, that familiar wrongness infecting the room like black mold spreading in seconds. "No," I whispered, backing into the corner of the couch. "Not now, not while I'm awake." The static on the TV deepened, the white noise shifting into warbled shapes that seemed to pulse inward like a tunnel. The screen darkened around the edges, the hum grew louder, sharper, almost metallic. And then, a pair of glowing amber eyes appeared in the screen. Not bright, not violent, just watching. The entity didn't speak, it didn't move, it simply stared, and the boundary between dream and waking life dissolved like paper held over a flame. The floor beneath me softened into something that wasn't carpet anymore, something that breathed. A slow, heavy pressure wrapped around my shoulders. Sleep was pulling me under. No, I'm not asleep, I'm not. But my voice faded, swallowed by the static as the walls around me warped, their colors dripping down like wet paint. My vision blurred, stretched, twisted, and suddenly, I wasn't in my living room anymore. I was standing inside the dream corridor. Except this time, the corridor was alive. The stone walls pulsed faintly, expanding and contracting like a massive lung. The floor vibrated with a slow, rhythmic beat, either the corridor's heartbeat or my own, I couldn't tell. And the air tasted like old dust mixed with something metallic and sweet. The entity waited at the far end of the hall. Its form was almost solid now, still shifting at the edges, but unmistakably humanoid in shape. Its eyes burned a soft amber, no longer distant or predatory, but strangely calm. "Welcome back," it said, its voice curling through the corridor like fog. "You broke the final rule." "No," I breathed, stepping backwards. "I didn't say anything." "You didn't need to speak. Your fear acknowledged me. Your stare invited me, and your exhaustion let me in." Its eyes brightened slightly. "That is enough." My mind raced. "I said the third rule was I shouldn't ask for the rules, but I didn't." "You asked what the third rule was. That was the moment this became inevitable." A tremor shook through the corridor. The walls cracked, black veins splitting upward like lightning frozen in stone. Dust rained down in thick clouds. The floor buckled beneath my feet. I stumbled toward the opposite end of the hall, away from the entity, away from the dreamscape. "You can't run. Not from this. Not from me." My breath came in gasps. "Why me? What do you want from me?" "For you to stop pretending your world and mine are separate. Your dreams made you vulnerable. Your loneliness made you hollow, and your curiosity opened every door you claimed you never touched. But I never wanted this." "You never needed to want it. Dreams choose for you. They always have." The corridor shook again, violent enough that I fell forward onto my hands. Stone dust coated my palms. My vision flickered, blinking between the dream and flashes of my living room. TV static, glowing eyes, the silhouette in the corner, fog outside the windows. The worlds were merging. My worlds. "Please, just let me wake up." "You are awake," the entity said. The words hit with the weight of a falling building. I froze. "What?" "You've been awake this entire time. You simply refused to see it." The corridor's walls peeled back, revealing thin cracks through which I saw glimpses of my house, the kitchen, the hallway, the couch. Each scene flickered like frames of mismatched film. My body sitting, twitching, breathing heavily. My eyes open but unfocused. I wasn't asleep in the real world. I was trapped in a waking dream. "I don't understand." "You will, because there is only one rule left. The rule no dreamer understands until the end." The corridor split completely. Suddenly, I was standing in my living room again, but not entirely. The walls were warped. The floor dipped at unnatural angles. Every object looked handmade by someone who had only been told what furniture should look like. The windows dripped streaks of shadow instead of light. And behind me, the entity solidified. Actual footsteps, actual weight on the floor, actual presence. Its voice was quiet, almost gentle. "The last rule is simple. If I become real, you do not." My breath shattered inside my lungs. I turned slowly. The entity was inches away. Its face shimmered into focus, smooth skin, hollow cheeks, eyes glowing, a faint knowing smile spreading across its lips. I stumbled back. "No, please!" The entity reached out, not violently, not aggressively, softly. Its fingers brushed my cheek. and my skin turned cold instantly, a numbness spreading across my jaw, down my throat, into my chest. My thoughts slowed. The room dimmed. My legs weakened. I felt myself fading, not dying, not falling asleep, fading, like a dream dissolving at dawn. "No," I cracked. "Don't take me." "I'm not taking. You invited me." My vision blurred. The room folded inward. My body grew weightless. And finally, I understood. The entity wasn't haunting me. The entity wasn't invading me. The entity wasn't tormenting me. It was replacing me. The last thing I heard before everything went silent was its whisper brushing against my mind. "Go rest in the corridor. I will live the life you couldn't." Darkness swallowed me whole. Then nothing. As the final echoes of the entity's voice fade, the narrator speaks in the trembling quiet of someone who has finally learned what true helplessness feels like. Even outside the dream world, there is no sense of safety. Nights have become a coin toss between waking terror and silent anticipation. Days feel thinner, stretched like a film over something waiting just beneath. Each shadow in the hallway seems to hold its breath. Each whisper of wind feels too familiar. They try to convince themselves that dreams cannot cross the threshold into waking life, but they know better now. They've seen too much, heard too much, felt the entity's fingers pressing on their reality like someone testing the strength of glass. And every time they close their eyes, even for a blink, they swear they catch a glimpse of it standing just behind them, its head tilted as if studying how much longer it has to wait. The narrator's voice drops to a whisper. Dreams don't stay in dreams, not when something else is dreaming with you. A low hum, like that same impossible vibration from the dream realm, bleeds into the background, barely audible but unmistakably intentional. They breathe out once more. If this is the place where my dreams end, then I hope you're awake enough to hear me. The hum cuts abruptly. Silence swallows everything.